Hello, good morning, everyone. I am pleased today to have a new guest on our live webinar series from Strategy Up about the opportunities and challenges of going digital in 2021. Today, I have Tim Brennan with me, who is an expert in helping candidates and the employers find the right match, right, and organize better the HR function. So, Tim, I want to thank you and welcome you to this series of webinars, which we are starting with you today as well. So why don't you start by introducing yourself to our audience, and then I will take it from there with a couple of questions to you.
Sure, and thanks, Mark, for letting me come and join you today. Hi, my name's Tim. It's Tim Brennan. I am the Chief Visionary Officer of a little company called Fit First Technologies. And you know, it's funny, we really are all about understanding how to find fit with the job, fit with the manager, fit with the team, and fit with the organization, and then incorporate that into your hiring practices and your ongoing professional development. Now, a little background on me is I got started in this because I used to be in corporate world, and you know, I used to have a job where in that job, I worked for a corporate environment U.S. Company, hired about 250 people in my career, you know, and I got it right about half the time. And in that world, that made me like a superstar. The thing is, I had no idea why I got it so right once, Mark, and then the other time that I completely missed it. And that 22 years ago was what got me going on the why is it we get it so right the first time and get it so wrong, and we don't know when we're doing it. And it all came down to what became our biggest principle is that I truly believe the issue always has been we don't always measure what matters.
Yes, and this is very important. So thank you, Tim, for this short and brief introduction. And as always, before we hit the topic, I always like to thank our platinum sponsor, which is Agora Office Space. This is the space where we are having our own studio, and we are broadcasting live from Bedford, Nova Scotia. And our strategic partner, which is the Chartered Institute of Marketing Management of Ontario. It's an organization which I am very proud of because I am their Chief Strategy Officer. Having said this, Tim, let's start our lovely discussion, which I was really anticipating it, right? I was just waiting for this moment to start talking about what are the real challenges in HR in general today. You know, it's not anymore the same way we're doing it before the pandemic. So just give us a little bit your views about the function in general, and then later we'll dive into the details of the tools and the strategy.
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting. It feels like we're at a sort of an anniversary, aren't we? You know, this is our second April going through with this new reality with the COVID pandemic affecting our businesses. You know, not just here in North America, but right across the globe. You know, we've learned so much about people in the last year because we've had to. And it's a lot of organizations have been forced to have to step back and look at how they do things because all these things that we would never be able to do, all of a sudden, we now have to do them. And in HR, you know, I have one client that has 2,300 employees, and they were adamant that they would always need to come to an office, that they did their absolute best work when they came in and everybody was there in the same building, and they had offices all across the US. You know, Mark, within 72 hours, they had everybody working from home. Wow. They had them all tooled up.
Yes.
And they had to learn on the fly, how do you engage a team? How do you have people feel like they're part of a team when they're no longer that culture piece, where we no longer have the water cooler, where we no longer have the lunch room, where we no longer have, my gosh, I mean, that completely changes the way that your people and managing interact with each other.
Yes. I think this is a huge challenge, because I also used to work in huge organizations where we had like on 2 floors, 800 employees, right? And then at some point you are bumping into each other, rubbing shoulders, having a chat with the CXOs. When you are a junior person, you were able to shine, you were able to show who you are, and then you were hoping to get promoted so fast, right? Because you know the people. And now it's all behind screens. It's like really tough from the social employees, social activities, right? So it's like, how are we going to cope with all that?
Well, and you think about it, it's like there's a really interesting study that was done with the Wiley Group. They were looking at like 3,000 hiring managers back in November. Mm-hmm. And there were some really interesting stats that came out. It was that like 75% of the businesses in their survey found they had to completely realign how they interact with people and change job requirements. And interacting with others. I've seen some great stories of success where, there's the daily huddles now where people are coming together for 10, 15 minutes and sort of trying to recreate that water cooler opportunity to share, hey, what are you working on today?
Yes.
But something that we've all had to learn to do is we all had to learn to be a lot more articulate when we were communicating in emails and live chats, because you didn't have the ability to go back and forth like you did just in the hallway and share ideas.
Yes, 100%. And I think now the challenge is, and this is, I think, the biggest topic which we need to cover today is the recruitment process, right? This is really making it very tough on HR managers, recruiting managers, about trying to talk to talents or to candidates across a screen, right? And before you were able to read people from different body language when they were sitting in front of you. And today it's like completely different. And I know that when we were preparing for this webinar, you just put a word which is still buzzing in my mind. And you said, we talked about lean everything in the organization. We don't talk yet about lean HR. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, and boy, as it's ever now come to the top in the last year, I was always fascinated working with manufacturing organizations when they educated me about what the lean principles. And I'm going to take it to a real simple. If you're not familiar with the lean principles, it really comes down to one thing, one really key important point, and that is if you have a step in the process or the process that isn't adding value, and you should be able to remove that step from the process without changing the outcome. The other side is they look at what are the steps in the process that add the most value and do more of that. So we started looking at, well, let's look at the hiring process. And one of the things that's a big shift right now, and you think about from hiring and lean, is that, the resume. In most organizations, the number one first step in the hiring process is send me your resume. Now, who in your market has an updated resume to send? The currently unemployed, the soon to be unemployed, or the want to be unemployed, get out of where they are. Right?
So true.
How did that become our target audience for talent? The soon to be unemployed, the currently unemployed, and those who aren't happy in their current jobs. That is our target. You know who I want to target? I want to target the person who's slightly disengaged where they are, but is so dedicated and focused on delivering their commitment that they stay even in a place that isn't really the best fit for them. And that's only about 2/3 of the population out there.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So the idea of lean is, well, what is it that in the principles that is the most valuable? And it's one of the things we started looking at is that, we talk about trailing indicators in a business where we look at, the numbers, and in that world, everything is always a trailing indicator. We're always looking at sales numbers from yesterday. We're looking at absentee rates from last month. Yeah. We're looking at product. There's nothing you and I can do today, Mark, that is going to change any of the KPIs in anyone's business today. We can only look at them in the rearview mirror and try to make the next ones be better. So that's not going to help us in hiring because we don't want trailing indicators in hiring. We don't want to hire them and then find out if they're any good or not.
So we need to predict a little bit, right? So we need to work into the world of prediction.
Yeah, we need to figure out what the leading indicators are.
Yes.
So like then there's sort of like the next level. About 10, 15 years ago, there was this big buzz around the whole idea of, hey, well, maybe if we got our employees more engaged, they'd be more productive and they would stay longer. So let's have everyone focus on having engaged employees. Well, the reality is there's nothing you and I can do today that is going to change anyone's engagement. Engagement either happens in an employee because of something you've done really well over a long period of time, or the opposite, you did something really poorly over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And then that created engagement or disengagement. So then you start thinking, well, what are the leading indicators? And every single study you look at, it always comes down to fit with the job, fit with the manager, fit with the team, and fit with the culture. And if you got all four of those things aligned, there's a high probability that this person is going to stay and be successful and actually want to be successful and stay in your organization, which then raises actually tapping into the talent that you found in the what they know and what they've done.
So now what you're telling me is actually you're raising my awareness about the complexity of the recruitment process so that you can keep an employee engaged over time, right? And I can say that, not to name or not to shame, but many companies had already problems in keeping their employees engaged where we were still at the workplace.
Oh,
now how about talking about being like completely online, right, away and disconnected from the physical workplace, and now what they have to do as extra efforts to keep us even more engaged, right?
Yeah, well, and then that was, I think what a lot of organizations learned is that they thought they had leaders. And when the workforce then went and worked remotely, they discovered that the leadership they thought they had was actually mislabeled, and that they really had was supervisors. And the ability to just understand that your people are connected to your mission and your values is going to have them engaged. But otherwise, what are you going to do? You're going to be able to supervising, checking to make sure they did everything they're supposed to do. I mean, that's what you have remotely. It's a different game. We need to connect as humans.
Yeah.
You know, you and I are working almost in silos in remote environments. We're humans. We thrive human interaction, and we thrive getting feedback from humans. So you know, you can do so much with on a screen, but you know, my goodness, I'm so fortunate. I'm in a part in North America where I was actually able to go to a coffee shop and have a meeting with somebody, and it was wonderful. And you forget how much you miss that.
Yes, of course. So, you know, we're talking about this lean organization, lean HR, and we understand all this. And then I just want to jump into the controversial discussion saying, okay, so we have tools for all this. I see behind you Jobtimize, talent sorters, and probably you have a million of other tools which you can find here and there. And then, so should I jump directly and working with tools, or what are your two cents about these tools, or is there a step approach to this?
Well, first of all, tools are just tools. Tools don't do anything. People have to use the tools. And to use the tool, it's like if you're going to build a house, you don't just start building a house. You actually start with a strategy. You say, okay, what's the end result want to look like? And then you start building together the plan of how we're going to get that house built to what we want, right? When we're looking at, and let's take companies in two columns. There's the ones that are allowed to search for virtual talent because they now can expand their target audience to being anyone, anywhere. Because they're working remotely and they don't need to come into an office anymore, you could have somebody working thousands of miles away from you that you never tapped into before. You then have another silo, which is going to be those people where, no, you can't do that. You only can hire people who are able to come in because for them, they can't change, they have to run. So knowing that companies fall in those two different paths, the commonality is you got to have a strategy. You got to have a picture of what the end result you're looking for is. And I want you to think about your strategy needs to be in three things. It needs to, there's when we're measuring the fit of an individual, there's the what they know, the what they've done, and there's the who they are. And the who they are now is even more important than ever, because you're not there anymore to be able to manage, supervise the how they act, right? How they spend their day, how they focus their things. The who they are is the most important piece of information that you could have, because that's who's doing the work when you're not looking.
Yes.
I can come on and act differently for my 15, 20-minute call every day if I have to. But then I'm going to go back and be who I am when you're not looking, and you can't see me anymore when I'm working remotely.
100%. You know, first of all, you got me at the word strategy. You know, I am a strategy addict, to be honest, and I always believe that anything should start from a strong strategy. And what you really spoke about is about, you know, the soft skills versus the technical skills. And I always said it's very easy to teach the technical skills, but it's very difficult to teach the soft skills, right? Especially the things that are around, you know, integrity, honesty, you know, loyalty, and all this kind of stuff. And then today, as you said, it is much more important to have the loyal employee, the honest employee, the honest colleague, the honest boss, right? Versus the one who can really do the technicalities, because we really want people whom we can trust remotely. It's very tough, as you said.
Well, here's some little, you know, those are all core competencies that I think every organization is going to say they want. Yeah. You know what the things they don't always think about though is, how do I want them to make a decision? Do I want them to be comfortable with risk and just get it done? Or do I want them to gather all the information, research the options, and then make a calculated choice on what their action plan is going to be? Now, those are two completely different types of people. And I can think of environments and roles where both of them would be the right fit. But boy, if you put the person in the wrong place, both of them are going to be a disaster. Yeah. That's just not how they make decisions. Yeah. How about you're now having to do all your work on the phone, and every time the phone rings, you stress out. Let's fit, right? It's funny, you know, it's funny. I was just talking to some friends the other day about how life has changed. Different, you know, I'm an advocate that I don't believe that generations are a great way to predict performance, that older people don't always act differently than younger people. That's not been my data experience. But I do find there's interesting exposures to different experiences. Like, you remember when you and I were kids and someone knocked at the door, everyone would run to go find out who was at the door. Now somebody knocks at the door and everybody hides behind the couch, hoping they'll go away. Well, guess what?
Oh my God.
Different experiences, right? Different lifestyle. I mean, my kids, they don't knock on a door. They text from outside the house saying, I'm here now.
Yes.
Right?
It's a very different experience, right? Very different behavior as well, right? So the behavioral attributes of the employees and the employers are changing. And honestly, a couple of days as well, I was talking with a group of friends, actually business people and owners. And one of the questions were, oh, you know, we hire these young people, but we're not able to cope with them. And you know, this generation gap, like the generation X, Y, and then soon the generation Z is coming into the workplace, versus where you still have probably baby boomers and millennials as the job owners or as business owners, and you have this huge disconnect of what is acceptable.
Or what is expected.
Yes.
Right? And that's about knowing your people.
Yeah.
right? So, I am somebody who doesn't care for feedback. I know that about who I am. I'm not a big fan of feedback. I believe, because it's been my experience that I'm a nature nurture guy, right? So my experience has been anytime anyone in my life has given me feedback, it's never been good. No one ever said, Tim, I'd like you to come down to my office. I have some feedback for you. And it ended well. So in my world, in my mind, in the who I am, no feedback means everything's great.
Yeah.
Now, if you lived in an environment where when you don't get feedback, you get worried, if you lived in the digital world, if you're now sitting at home wondering how come people aren't liking something you posted and you're not getting immediate feedback. I have people on my own team that I know I need to give them feedback. And if I don't give them feedback, they think something's wrong.
Yes.
So that's about know your people. Now, hey, go back. Let's put two pieces together. We talked about this knowing your people and about the who they are and the human element. You brought up the little part about the skill set. I will always give this caveat is that there are always going to be admission tickets to the game that you can't move. If you're hiring a registered nurse, that registered nurse needs to have the degrees. They need to have their papers. Most organizations are not prepared to bring that in. If you're hiring someone that needs to have a certain designation, that will be an admission ticket to the game.
Yeah.
However, the part that we can change, so taking the lean piece, let's take the who they are and let's put that as the very first step in the hiring process. So you're asking me about what talent sorter was earlier. And I said, well, what talent sorter is, today in the traditional hiring system, you sort your candidates into the yes, no, maybe piles based on the what they know and what they've done. That's the resumes. And if you had 100, 150 people apply, and oh, by the way, guess what? It's now 300, 500 people applying because now that your market got bigger and there's a lot more people looking for work, you had to go through every single application to decide if they go in the yes, no, maybe pile. What Talent Sorter does, it gives you it's the tool that allows you to sort them into the yes, no, maybe piles based on fit first. Then look at the what they know, what they've done. So I can then take the 100 and 200 people, rank them on my screen and say, I'm going to look at Julie because she's the best fit for the role. Now let's look at her education and work experience. And I can look at the first 10 people who are the top 10 people. And then if I don't find what I'm looking for all three, what they know, what they've done, and who they are, I can go to the next 10. But I'm not going to have to go through 250.
Yeah.
I might go through 30. I'm going to save 75% of my time right there. And then I'm going to be spending my time with people where I'm measuring what matters. I'm actually going to have conversations of understanding how is this person going to fit with my team? How is this person going to fit with my organization? And how are they going to represent my brand?
Hence, you need to have a strategy because you cannot do that if you really don't know what you're looking for, or you don't have the values in the company, or you don't have the spirit which you want to have in the organization, right?
Well, you remember, it's a good thing, Mark. It's really good of us is if you don't have a strategy, if you haven't defined what your organization's culture is, don't worry, you have one.
Yeah.
It's there. You just didn't get to choose it, and you didn't get to build towards it. Which is why having that whole piece of understanding what is your company's people, it gets into this whole area around employment branding. Do you have a strategy to go and find people who represent your employment brand? Now, you better define what your employment brand is at the same time as building your strategy. Remember, what's that end result look like?
Yeah.
And now here's the best time at all, because right now there's it's funny, there's I'm 59 years old. I'm gonna pick a number in the sand and say, I bet you there isn't a person on this webinar today who is over the age of 50, who in the last year hasn't had a moment where they were sitting around thinking, when this is all over, do I really want to go back to what I was doing?
Yeah.
And there's an awful lot of people right now who are out there that are kind of looking with, well, what else could I do next? And there's the opportunity for the employer who's got their strategy in place, who's got it defined of what it is to be part of their organization, and defines what it is that they need in their team.
Yeah, and I think this is the biggest part, because again, I love this topic, and I think it is an area, as you said, that we didn't yet talk a lot about lean HR in organization and in the corporate world. And this is a little bit an unexplored area. And actually, from my experience as well, there is sometimes a huge disconnect between the HR person in the HR department and the recruitment and the recruiting manager who is at the operational side of the business, right? And the question is, how can we bring this together in a better way? I don't know if you have the answer now or if you have the strategy around that, but I think one of the major issues, like when I was a recruiting manager, sometimes I was getting resumes from HR because they ticked the boxes of what HR is looking at, whereas it's not ticking the boxes which I want as a recruiting manager. And there was a huge disconnect over there. And probably, as you said, it was waste of time. Probably lots of talents were not contacted back, that they were selected or not. I was having on my desk lots of irrelevant resumes and CVs. So how can we fix all this? Or is there a quick fix for this one?
Well, it goes back to measuring what matters, doesn't it? Not measuring what's easy. And we've been, when we think about, again, you think about the traditional hiring system has been people send in their resume.
Yeah.
And HR puts them in a yes, no, maybe pile based on their education and work experience. Well, if that person doesn't have 3 years work experience, they go into the maybe pile. It's funny, I could tell you story after story. I had an HR manager once told me they only hire people who are lucky, Mark. And I asked them, how do you measure if they're lucky? Yeah. They said, well, I see these 250 resumes. They took 100 of them, stuck them in the garbage can, and they said, those are the unlucky people.
What? Oh my God.
True story. If people create these things. I have had HR managers argue with me that one of their knockouts are typos in cover letters.
Yeah.
I would ask them, is there any relevance to the ability of the person to do a written letter in the job you're hiring them for? And they'd say, well, no, they're not going to be writing and they're going to be working on the floor. I says, well, then why is that a relevant knockout? But it was easy to knock out. Okay, I got 250 candidates. How do I get it down to 25? We created all these rules.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is that disconnect is the operations guy is not working by the same set of rules. He doesn't care if he's got a typo in his cover letter. He wants to know when somebody phones on the phones into our office, is this person going to represent my brand on the phone and solve the problem?
Yes.
They're not measuring that. They're measuring whether they got the things that they can measure. So that's why we need to focus on who they are.
And let me ask you the question. Many of the organizations, I think, are still paper-based, right? So I get a resume that is on paper, or I ask my candidate to replicate their resume when they are filling in the form, and then it becomes so cumbersome. So imagine you are a candidate who's looking for a job. You are probably sending CVs and resumes, probably 10, 15 a day. Imagine you have to redo the stuff 15 times in different 15 ways.
But, interesting, right? And there's that happening. The other one, though, that's even more common, though, right now, is when you look at, say, let's use LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, Indeed.com.
Yes. Yes.
which is now really a North America-wide leader. I can go in there, I build my resume, I build my little profile in there, and I can go online and I can just go apply, and I can apply to 100 jobs in the next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, the greatest thing as the recruiter is, wow, I post an ad on one of these boards and I get hundreds of candidates.
Yes.
And the worst thing is, I push an ad on these jobs, I get hundreds of candidates. None of them have actually screened themselves.
No.
So you've got that element. You've got, the traditional hiring system, the other thing. So the resume, it's not just the resume, it's what do you do with it, right? So now you do a phone screen and all you end up doing is verifying what you're reading in the resume, right? You say, oh, did you, so I see you work here at the ABC company. So tell me a little more about what that was like. What did you do there? Oh, very good. Yes, thank you. Then they got this thing, that is a phone screen. Then they bring them in for an interview. Now, an interview ends up being two people sitting across the table from each other, lying to each other. The candidate is sitting there telling you all the great reasons about why they're going to be an asset and why you should bring them into your company and how they're not going to cause problems. And then there's this moment in the interview where it's about 3 or 4 minutes in when you watch these on video, when you can physically see the recruiters change when they made their decision about whether they want to go further with this candidate or not. And you can physically see the shift. And that point, the recruiter either starts verifying for themselves, yeah, this isn't the right person, or they start selling them on why this is a great place to work. They then may go and go to another interview where they do a group interview where they bring in 2 or 3 other people to find out if they can stand the person and take it from there. But we're just not measuring the stuff that matters here. What really needs to be happening in an interview is we need to be focused on understanding how is this person going to show up in our reality? How are they going to show up in our work world? Right? So I know you got the education, I know you got the work experience, but who are you? You're going to be working with me 40 hours a week, 60 hours a week, 20 hours a week. It doesn't, you're going to be here. You're going to be out there where I can't manage you physically, and I need to know who you are. And if I know who you are, then we can work together. And if you know who I am, we can work together. And that's, I guess, how we enhance our relationships as humans.
Yes, this is really, I think the key is how to take the candidate from this, what I call the circus of the recruitment process, right? Because as you said, it's role play, right? I play my role of the tough manager or the tough recruiter, and the candidate is playing their roles of their super talented persons that are fit for the job. And then how we can take this and put it in the real environment. And this is when we start talking about performance and adaptability and adaptation to the workspace, right? And this is the disconnect. And this is why, for example, we have the probation periods, right? Where they are many times invoked, right?
Well, yeah. And by the way, why do we have a probationary period? Because the person came to work and had a mask on the end of a stick for 90 days. And then after the probation period's over, the mask can come down and you can start finding out who they are. They can hold it up there for a while. But if you have to walk around work all day long, holding a mask in front of your face, pretending to be someone you're not, eventually your arms are going to get tired.
Yes.
Eventually the mask is going to come down and we're going to, but I'm sure no one on this webinar has ever had an experience where they hired somebody and then later on they found out they didn't actually get what they thought they were getting in the person. No, that's never happened.
Well, listen, I hate to break the news.
Yeah.
It happened to me, and I am sure it happened to every
single
recruiter.
Mark, I've actually been the guy who got hired into the wrong job. It's like, wow, I was so good at getting hired. because that I got hired into a job that they should never put me in.
Yeah, yeah. And this is one of the challenges. And now we spoke about Talent Sorter, but I want to understand about Jobtimize. You told me one is a front end for the employers, one is a front end for the, right? So let us understand what the employer can do, because I think one of the biggest problems are from the employer side, because if the employer is able to get things right from day one, we wouldn't have this landslide of repercussions after from the interview to the recruitment.
You can't always blame the employer, because there are there's I wish I had it handy, I'd show it to you, but you remember there's a book called Interview Guide for Dummies. It's a yellow and black book. It's like a #1 seller, right? Yeah, sure. The employer needs to make better choices and needs to have a strategy and measure things that matter for their business. But you got to remember too, is that when you're unemployed, your job is to get an offer. When you're looking for work, or the other scenario is you're really unhappy where you've been for the last 5-6 years. Anywhere else looks better than where you are. So you just start playing to get hired. And these books and these people have been, and I've been trained on how to get hired, right? What we need to do is understand what we need. We need employers to have a process where they're measuring what matters for their business, not getting sold who the best person is. And on the other side, we need to start giving tools to people who are thinking about what they want to do next in their career. So that's why we created Jobtimize. So Jobtimize, anybody on this call right now can go to jobtimize.com and go in and find out what they should be when they grow up. It's free to use. It's a place where you can go in, build a profile of what you know, what you've done, fill in an assessment of knowing who you are, and even do an occupational interest survey. It'll then cross-reference you against 1,250 different careers and show you where you would have challenges, where you might have really opportunities. You might be a really good fit, but you don't have the education and work experience. So it might be something that trigger you to go get education and work experience. And then it links with our partnership with Indeed. It links into jobs and employers who are hiring in those communities, in those jobs. So it's a place where you can actually build that whole community. And that's absolutely available to anybody right now to go to Jobtimize. Where that technology becomes a tool that can be used is that we're working right across North America right now with an awful lot of apprenticeship programs. Places where, well, imagine in part here in Canada, we're dealing with hiring electrical technicians. They need to find thousands of electrical technicians. Well, what do? Ask them to send in their resume? Let's see, they have no education, they have no work experience, but they want to be an apprentice in a 4-year electrical technician program. That ain't going to work. So how do you find people to be apprentices into the trades? Well, you find people who'd be a really good fit to be an electrical technician, and then you give them the opportunity to get the education and work experience. 2/3 of students who go into the first year of university in North America within 7 years don't finish the program they started.
Wow.
Right? That's an awful lot of wasted energy.
Yeah.
But also what happens is that they start going down the path of getting the education and finding out once they start getting some work experience, I'm not really a fit for this. Mark, I went through school in the beginning, way back when, when I did university, I went through school and became a junior intermediate music school teacher. I lasted 9 months. 4 years of education, lasted 9 months as a school teacher, and said, I gotta get out of here. This is not a fit for me.
Wow.
But I just was the path that I was on, because around me was telling me that's what I should do. And that has been what I've been exposed to. I was never exposed to what I do today until I was maybe in my 30s.
Wow. So technically Jobtimize in a way could be also delivered in a way or being provided to students who are actually to two different levels of students, right? The candidates who are trying to enter university, maybe it's good for them to use something like this to really understand what they should study. And then for the people who are just going to graduate, to really understand where they should look, right?
Yeah, and there'll be and people who are currently employed thinking about, am I really going to do this for the next 10 years?
Yeah.
Or is it time for me to start thinking about what would be something that would give me energy? And just a chance to explore and have different conversations with different employers. And it's interesting because even your skill sets would be crossover. You would never, you'd never imagine that, wow, I've been working in this industry, but look, the things I've learned would be of so value in another industry as well.
So what is coming to my mind, and this is just an operational question to understand. So when we have a dysfunctional team or dysfunctional department, or we feel that there is something wrong in the organization from the structure and the resource and talent management, do you think, is it a good way to use tools like Talent Sorter, Jobtimize, so that we're not looking to fire, right? But we're looking to put the right person in the right place rather than firing people. Maybe, Mark is not great at what he's doing because he hates Excel sheets. But if I put him to be a customer service representative, he's a great person and he could be the best one ever, right? So rather than firing Mark because he didn't do his Excel files correctly and he has lots of mistakes, I am going to use this kind of tools to reposition this talent in a different location in the organization.
Yeah, and we've seen that. I mean, I can tell you stories of an organization, it's a chicken rendering plant, where they found in the shipping department people who were doing okay work, but were actually wired to be in quality assurance. And yet they had no education, work experience. So they sent them off to college and funded them. They said, look, go take these courses. And if you pass, we'll pay for the course and we'll hire you to do your apprenticeship work in our quality assurance department. Right? So there's all that fit, but you kind of lead also into something else there is understanding in an individual is what is it that really does give that person their energy and what are their strengths. And I'm an absolute firm believer that we've been doing it backwards in performance reviews for years. Is that, I remember they used to do a performance review on me in corporate at the, usually they'd look at the last year. It was about March, after the year was well done, we would sit down and look in those trailing indicators we talked about earlier. What is it I did really well and what I did, really poorly. Yeah. And then what they would do is they'd build an action plan. So I was going to work on my weaknesses, and I'm going, okay, time out. Here's a better strategy. How about you understand what are the things about who I am that are my absolute strengths and give me energy? Find a way to have me do more of that and reduce my exposure to my natural weaknesses. You know what? I bet you everything would just work better. Yes. It's not just these linear conversations.
But I think this is the hard way. The easier way was to say, oh, you know what? You have these weaknesses. Go take a training here. Or you know what? This is a tick in the box why I can fire you, right? Because you're not able to perform on specific tasks.
I can remember I had a performance review once, Mark, and the comment was you need to work on bringing people with you. Okay, whatever that meant. Oddly enough, the person that wrote it ended up working for me 4 years later. but a performance review has always been fascinating because they leave you in the corner. It's kind of like they take a machete and they rip you apart. They leave you lying in the corner, scratched and bloody. And they stand at the door and turn back and look at you and go, gee, I thought I was just trying to help.
Yeah. And this is why actually one of the things which we do with organizations when we have assignments around leadership and HR management, one of the main modules which we try to enforce is how to give and receive feedback. I think this is really amazing talent that not every manager who is managing people have, right? And I think when you don't have such a skill, it is like, as you said, it's deadly in the workplace, right? It could be very destructive.
So take what you just said, put it together what I just said, and now let's find people who are actually naturally wired that their strength, the who they are, is naturally someone who gives feedback.
Yeah.
Right? If I have to learn how to give feedback and I don't like to give people feedback,
Yes.
I'm probably going to sugarcoat it all because
Yes.
I don't like conflict. I need somebody who wants to develop their people and who's wired in a core competency of inspiring others as well as holding other people accountable.
That's true.
And those are all the who they are stuff, which, by the way, we only learn most hiring practices. We only learn it at the end. So I want to go back here and think about strategy, though, because, one of the things that, people say, this is all nice and you guys could talk, you and I could talk for hours about all this stuff, but what do you do with it, right? Because I said at the beginning, tools are just tools. They don't do anything. People have to use tools. And then you got to figure out why are you even using the tools? One of the first steps that people can do is they can take a look at their own existing teams and understand, who do I have representing my brand today? Now, there is no right, there is no wrong, there is no high, there is no low. Your people can't fail being who they are. And that's your starting point, right? That's your current, what your culture looks like. It's the DNA of your organization. From there, you can start setting targets of what do you want more of in the future. And then start building your strategy, knowing that the current people are running your business. You're not going in and getting rid of everybody, but you may find that you need to, like you said earlier, you might have to move a few people around to different places where they might be more of a better fit. But that fit's got multiple levels to it, right? There's the fit with the job. There's got to be the fit with the manager. There's got to be the fit with the team, right? So you and I might be more effective working with a different manager within the organization.
Yes, that's true. It's like, as you said, you have different level of where we need to fit at the job function, at the personality level, at the cooperation level. And I think this is what we miss when we do what I call traditional interviews and just traditional way of getting the resumes and reading through them. And as you said, I totally agree with you. I am an employer. When I am interviewing a candidate, probably it takes me the first 2 minutes, not even the third minute, so that I know if I want to continue with this candidate or not.
Well, it's funny. And I know if I'm looking for someone who's going to be working directly with me and my team around me that supports me with the research work we do, I know where my weakness points are. I know what I need other people to do so I can reduce my exposure to those things.
Yeah.
Right. And they're not in a resume. I know that if we think about what matters, if we talk about in generic, I actually did a study about 15 years ago and still end up talking about it often, is about the difference between the traditional hiring system and what it measures and what actually matters in the performance. So if I take an organization's performance bell curve and say, here are your stars and here are your passengers.
Mm-hmm.
I never say poor performers anymore because everyone says, well, we got rid of our poor performers. Okay, well, give me the ones that you kept that were okay, all right, and frankly don't hurt you. That's why you didn't get rid of them.
Yes.
They're your passengers. I want to know, what are those two groups, your stars and your passengers, what do they have in common? Because that's what matters in your culture. It might be how they make decisions. It might be their intuitiveness. It may be their integrity. Hey, I put someone with high integrity in a group with moderate integrity. The high integrity person leaves. I want to know what they have in common because there'll be things about them that are in common. But then I want to know what they have that's different. And I can tell you there are three things that show up between stars and passengers. It doesn't matter what the role is. Number one is they learn quickly and don't get bogged down with the wrong details. Your stars. You don't have communication problems. They match the culture. They receive information the way the organization communicates. Right? Your passengers and poor performers get bogged down with the wrong details. Right? They both might be detail oriented, but they focused on the wrong ones. The second one is they take personal accountability or responsibility for their own actions. Your top performing stars are the first people who critique themselves on how well they did and want to improve. They're the first people to sign up for those courses online, right? The passengers, they actually repel from taking responsibility, and they're very quick to blame other people or other things for why they weren't be able to do their job. You know, bad customers didn't do what they were supposed to do. You know, the pricing, the product, and it was shipping. It was never them. I always say this is their personal coat of arms, right? The third thing is, and I've always found this one fascinating, is they have a sense of humor. Now, that doesn't mean they're funny people. It means they know how to use who they are to diffuse stress and conflict while gaining the commitment of others to their view. And I thought about that one over and over again when that kept coming up in my study. As I think about any manager who inspired me and engaged me, always tendency, they knew exactly how to do that. Yeah. Right? Now, those three things alone, not one of them's in a resume. Not one of them's in a resume. But what do? We put people in the yes, no, maybe piles based on what they know and what they've done, not what matters.
100%. Tim, really, this is like so engaging, right? And it's eye-opening to anyone, right? Either if you are at the recruiter side or if you are at the candidate side, if you are able to master these three attributes which you discussed about. So from the recruiter side is to master about how to detect them. And from the candidate side is to master how to be yourself and be in these three categories. I think this is where I think 50% of the hurdles are gone, right? So now we go down to business, which is the education, the technicalities, and all this kind of stuff. Otherwise, you know, the last thing you want to do is to have someone whom should be extrovert, and then at the end of the day, he's just introvert in his or in her role, and then it's like ruining the whole dynamics which you were hoping to have.
Yeah, and there's that whole caveat as well that goes with it is the organization needs to reserve the right to get smarter. On day one, you go, okay, I'm going to start measuring these things. I'm going to start understanding what I'm bringing in. They need to understand that over time, they're going to learn more and more about what is most important, and they need to be prepared to adjust what their view is of who they really are.
Yeah.
And there's where the strategy comes in play, because the strategy needs to be, well, what do you want to be? What do you want your organization to look like? What got you here to 2020 pre-pandemic is not going to be the same organization in 2023 that is excelling out there. It's going to look different, it's going to act differently, and it's going to have a different personality.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Tim, I don't know if you noticed about the time. We've been talking for 53 minutes.
Oh, we better stop now. Mark, well, you know what? We'll just have to come back and finish this conversation another day.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. So I just want to make sure that we deliver our promise. We always try to keep our webinars around an hour maximum. And I know I don't want to take more of your time. I know that you are a very busy person trying to make the world a better place, right? And to try to resolve very important matters, right? So with that, Tim, I just want to thank you really for today, for your insights, for your valuable information which you shared with us. If I want to just ask you to summarize this discussion in less like 30 seconds, what would you want to tell to our audience and give them as an advice, whether they are a recruiter or they are a candidate?
You know, sorry, 30 seconds. I tell you, the two things, really just two. Number one, it's got to be that you need to measure what matters. And hey, let's take the time to figure out what you should be measuring in your organization. And there's lots of ways to do that. Happy to talk to anybody who's interested in learning about more about doing that, Mark, and I'm sure you can help them as well. And then on the other side, it's, hey, you know, number two would be is imagine your organization where everybody was coming to work and just being who they are. The amount of energy, the amount of productivity, amount of focus that people would have if they didn't have to always try to figure out how to fit in by being someone different than who they are. If we could just focus on who we are and we could tap into that, everything in your organization works better. The wheels all go around faster.
And this is what we want, right? This is what we want as whether we are on any side of the fence, this is what we want. We want to make sure, because also as a candidate, I want to make sure that I am in the right place where I don't have to hop every 6 months, right? I want to know that I am working with an employer who is valuing me as well, valuing my input and my potential, and I want to stay there for a while. So this is very important. And thank you so much, Tim. I want to thank our audience on Zoom and on Facebook for being with us today. I want to remind everyone that we are live every Wednesday. Next Wednesday, we're going to have a new guest. So please, if you want to know what it is about, go to our website, go to our social media on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and you will find all this information. Register. It's a free registration. Right, we're not getting anything out of that other than sharing the information and getting to know more people who are around us. Tim, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for everything you have done for us today. I want to wish you a great day, and I am sure that we will have a part 2 of this discussion in the future.
Oh, I'm sure we will.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Bye now.